Hello there, dear friends. Kalidas here to speak about today the planet Ketu, which is not a planet. It's an energy in the ecliptic that causes shadows in our zodiac. And it has something to do with our own egoic blindness. Ketu is the past, and its exact opposite in the chart will be Rahu, which represents the future. They're always on an exactly opposite axis in anyone's chart. And that means that there will be something that you came into this life very familiar with. And there will be something new for you to do, which will be that Rahu, that future direction. That's the spiritually expansive way. And to be caught in Ketu is to experience the Great Depression, which is lacking growth, stuck, not feeling open to life and its possibilities, but instead feeling burdened and victimized by those things. If your Ketu has failed, in other words, if you have a lot of failure in your past, then you will hold that as a block. But that's actually a better thing than a whole bunch of success in your past, because those who err greatly in this life are those who think they cannot err, those who think their mind cannot have blind spots, and that is Ketu. One example is a person who's been to college, and the way they look at another person who has not been to college, as if somehow they hold a superior knowledge, when really many of our schooling systems dumb down the intuition and box in the expansive thinking capacity. So Ketu becomes a source of pride, all that we think we've learned, and then we cannot learn more. And to be intuitive today, we have to have a clean slate. We can't be thinking that we already possess knowledge. Intuition comes from our connection with spirit. If there's an ego thinking it knows, it will block spirit. So what we're doing is we're affirming our moon nature and its shadow of Ketu, which says, I've already learned that, I don't have anything more to learn, and it turns away. Whereas spirit is the sun, it's eternally shining. It's easy to make the decision when you can see the difference in the two. The moon only becomes full for a brief moment every 4 weeks. And the sun shows up every day, even rainy days, which today is. And the sun is still illuminating and doing a wonderful job of bringing light to creation. So which do you choose? The soul, which is the sun, ever eternally, perfectly performing in the present moment, or the moon, which is destined to wax, and that's like racing towards your desire, and then become fulfilled for that brief moment, and then what happened to that? After you fulfill that desire, it slips through your fingers, the fulfillment is gone, and you're on a waning journey, which brings you into wondering really where you went wrong. So how does Ketu limit us? It's when we think that we know due to our past experiences. We limit our relationships, and this causes great pain. If we've had the past marred by trust in relationships, if we've had hard experiences with men or women, then we may impose that on a current or future relationship, and that's a Ketu afflictions, holding a wound and expecting it will happen again. It's one of the main ways we sabotage ourselves, and a constant thought of expectation will result in some sort of manifestation of that thought. So it's all about this present moment. This is why we are trying to meditate. But do we meditate? No. Most of the time we're in Rahu and Ketu. Ketu will be remembering all that's happened in your life. And this is a very common intruder in meditation. Whatever's been going on for you is going to be there, and it's going to shadow the light. The light only is there and invisible when you're present, when you surrendered Ketu. So how important is your past? Sri Yukteswar advises that you forget about it. That's how important it is. But many people who have strong egos, they carry all their achievement into the present moment, and they think that they alone are enough, and they're not. They will fail when they think that their shadow is the light. So how do we open in meditation then? We need to recognize we do have an attachment to our ego, don't we? We're following it into its past, fascinated by its experiences, by its knowledge, by its achievements. And then other way we do it is the future. What will happen to me? I'm the most important thing going on, so I must sit here when I say I'm meditating, I must instead think about me or a problem that I have. And both this Rahu, Ketu, they're blind spots to the light. You can't break through into a samadhi or into a deep meditation unless you release these things. And what must the ego realize in order to release its Rahu Ketu shadows on the mind? It must realize that it has failed itself. It must realize that it has fallen short of its goal of happiness eternal, and therefore must seek it now in a different way. And that is what allows us in meditation to release Rahu Ketu, or rather to be released from Rahu Ketu's enslavement. It is an ego fascination that causes us to delve into the past and identify with our achievements or with our failures, and to also think obsessively about our future, much of the time imposing past experiences into an expectation for future. And that is not the way to evolve and expand, because the goal is not to do a whole lot more of what we have already done. The goal is to follow God's will, which surely knows, made our horoscope, it knows what's old and what needs to be experienced as new in this life for us to blossom into the lotus, the 1,000-petaled lotus, which is our true brain capacity, our mind's capacity to become one with the mind of God. But if we're so fascinated by this little life experience of our past and those things we've done and our future and how we will look to the rest of humanity ultimately in this life, then we're really, really hypnotized by that ego. And that's Rahu Ketu. It's a serpent force. It is the serpent that has lured Adam, the original one consciousness, and Eve, his counterpart in that original consciousness. It's limited, it's lured us out of the Garden of Eden into ego consciousness, to the point where the moon is the most important thing to us, how I'm doing. And really, when those days when you are able to serve with devotion and let go of what you think you'd rather be doing, and instead follow God's will with full, wholehearted trust that giving and serving is His will, is His nature. It is Him. And so you go into that with surrender, and you'll find that sun, that presence, and it will become much more fulfilling to you, to us, than the ego's Rahu Ketu back and forth game, which ultimately results in depression. Ketu, the Great Depression, where you will be if you don't move forward in life, where you will be if you identify with your past, which is why Sri Yukteswar said, the great wisdom master, right over my left shoulder here, which is the right to the camera probably, he said to forget the past, because the vanished lives of all people are dark with many shames. and that human conduct is ever unreliable until we are anchored in the divine consciousness. And then he said, make a spiritual effort now. And this can be through service, through your wholehearted giving the best service you can. Or it can be in meditation, it can be through going to church. It can be any effort to improve yourself. Make that spiritual effort now, and everything in your future will improve. And this was Sri Yukteswar's recipe to dissolve the lunar nodes, which cause only blindness. They do not bring knowledge. They do not bring intuition. They bring fear, and they bring identification with our limited, flawed past, our memories of the ego's failures, and the imaginary successes of the ego. Even worse, because then you will have pride and be destined for a fall. So Rahu and Ketu are the intruders, and if you think that Saturn is the negative planet, I would say Saturn is one of the most spiritual, because it is the first chakra where Kundalini is bound, and it will be through our Rahu, our upward movement through the chakras to the spiritual eye. Rahu is the upward moving current, and that is how it relates to the inner anatomy. But this journey upward through the spine, it does begin at Saturn, and that is a place where many of us have fears bound and locked. So when we're going to the path of yoga and we want to have light form here and enter the light, we're going to need more energy. And it's this first chakra that holds a lot of it. And when you become fearless before God and Guru, through the result of having surrendered to their will and abandoned your own idea of what you thought was right, and are in this vibration now of trust and flow, that Saturn will become more and more fearless. It will release one by one its silly fears that have kept its energy bound. And then when we do our pranayama practice, we will have much, much more energy flowing to the brain. So remember, fear, anytime that anything triggers fear in you, it will tighten that first chakra. So when you think about your past and your past traumas, it will do that. If you think that the future holds dramatic disappointment, it will bind that first chakra. And so it is by living in this present moment, this place of God's reality, beyond our egoic obsessions of what we've done and what we may do. It's this present moment that dissolves our fear, because this is where God and love can be existent, can be real to us. And that's why in our lives, when we get stuck, we want to come back inside and find the block. Where am I stuck? Is it a Rahu? Is it a future imaginative attachment or fear? Or is it a past thing, a way that I've always been that I can't let go of? But if you can identify it and recognize it's destined for failure, just as all endeavors of the ego ultimately are, you'll want to release it. And that meditation will be a success, and it will bring you back to peace. But we can work against ourselves in meditation if we allow Rahu and Ketu, past and future thoughts, to reaffirm themselves constantly. This is not a productive way to meditate. It will cause us to reinforce those blind spots. So remember, the present moment. This is why we chant. This is why we use mantra. This is why we serve. This is why we meditate. It's to enter this presence, the presence of God, beyond the egoic obsessions that do not really exist, the past and future. All that it is right now. And if we're receptive to God's will, if we trust it, will be led on a most magnetic and magnificent and magical journey into the light. So let go of your past. Ketu is a blind spot. It is not any longer to be used in our lives as a source of pride, because that will cause a blind spot towards what we face today. We won't have intuition that way. And intuition is God's presence awake in the heart. And as that guides us each day, it can become a most enjoyable life, the presence of God. And that's what we practice in meditation. How important are those thoughts to you? And what else is there besides thinking? Silence. Silence that ego. Silence its Ketu, its memories. Those are just dreams. You probably don't remember them rightly anyway. And then silence that future voice, which can never perceive what's going to happen. It cannot predict God. God is ever new, and to live in Him we must be present. So God bless you and thank you. If you watched this whole video to the end, I very much appreciate you. And have a great day or night or life in God. Om.